The haves and the have-nots. Tribal leadership, materialism, exaggeration, great truths, and great lies. Do you feel supported? These are all pressures, questions, and qualities that this cycle of the Human Design Weather for June 7th to 13th, 2026 bring. Hello, and welcome to the Human Design Weather or Not podcast with me, Margot Fraser. Well, we move from the collective to the tribal this cycle with its underlying theme of mutual support. There's always an us versus them quality with the tribal traits, where the collective is about trying to find the wisdom and the best patterns to carry humanity into the future, but not so good at accepting the individual and that not everything works for everyone. The tribe is really interested in their own, however that's defined. A family, a community, a nation, a business, and so on. And the tribe innately understands at a primal level that acceptance of the individual is necessary to maintain a healthy gene pool. Well, let's get into the specifics here. This cycle starts on June 7th at 11:58 a.m., going until June 13th at 9:07 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, it starts June 7th at 5:58 p.m., going until the 13th at 3:07 p.m. Remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We're starting with the Sun-Earth positions because that's 70% of the conditioning field. The Sun has moved into Gate 45, the trait of the gatherer, gathering together in the throat center. Its keynote says the natural and generally beneficial attraction of like forces. This is the only expression of the tribal circuitry in the throat center and is the tribal leadership gate. In today's society, this could be the CEO of a business or a leader of a group or of a country, for example. It's the voice of I have, I don't have, we don't have. When I have this, I'm going to blah, 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 whatever that is. If I had that, then I could blah, 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 whatever that is. The manifestation of the material happens here, and it's the only place in the throat center that this happens. There's a possessiveness here in terms of gathering support for resources. That's not necessarily a bad thing as long as it benefits the whole community. This is what beneficial means in the keynote. But being selfishly possessive at the expense of those in the community is not going to play out well here. In this case, the money or resources personally gained by the leader can really poison that leader. This trait points at the ego center, the motor that generates willpower. So it's a gate of action. It's about gathering together support, whether that's for a cause or whether that's for a war. With this trait present and the pressure to possess resources, it could actually feel good to go shopping if you're feeling down. However, if you don't have the resources, just go window shopping and dream. This can be a time when you may be able to gather support for whatever it is that you'd like to manifest. As a tribal leadership trait, it can bring out making sure people in the community are supported and educated so that everyone can rise up together. Or in the polarity, it can be a tribal leader that wants to maintain control and therefore doesn't want to share the rewards of the work of the people in a fair way and tends to oppress education because it's easier to control those that aren't educated. The Sun's position is being grounded in the Earth's position, another tribal trait. This is gate 26, the trait of the egoist in the ego center. That's also called the heart center, and it's a motor that provides willpower. Its keynote says the maximization of the power of memory applied to the nurturing of continuity. This is part of the continuous improvement process necessary for the tribe to evolve and achieve its goals of material and spiritual success, and not to become extinct or go to business or whatever it might be. The tribe is inherently conservative, so exaggeration is needed to get them to let go of their memory of the old and embrace the new. This is why we sometimes refer to this gate as the trait of the salesperson or the trickster. This trait can bring through great truths and great lies. There's going to be a tendency with this present towards exaggeration this cycle, especially when trying to get others to buy into an idea, a belief, a product, a system, whatever it might be. This is the trait that brings natural authority when actions are truly aligned with whatever it is that you're selling or promoting. You have to really be a living embodiment of the new in order for people to really buy it. Otherwise, it comes across as more of that sleazy salesman kind of thing. Now, willpower has its limits. It's not generative like the sacral energy. It can push, but then it needs to relax. So the juice, per se, isn't always there. So for this trait, leisure time is essential for recuperation. It's one of our gates of denial. If you've been working hard, you could really feel the need for a vacation or some time off this cycle with this present. In the polarity, the ego power of this gate may be used to maintain status quo instead of advancement, or there could be an inability to adapt to the new. This trait's also associated with the immune system. So if you've been pushing and pushing and you don't take that break for recuperation, this is a time when you could pick up some bug that will force you to recuperate. When we look at these two traits together, positive exaggeration to bring the tribe together for the benefit of all could result. Or great lies could be told by a leader to bring her or himself more resources without it truly benefiting everyone in the tribe. A leader and their supporters could also exaggerate benefits of something to try to get others on board. Make sure to do your own research and listen to your own strategy and authority above all voices. If you have excess resources in some way, you could be very generous with them. This is something else that's built in here. There can be a real generosity and philanthropic nature. And you could be very persuasive in selling your ideas and products and so on, as long as you really believe in them. Just a note, too, that we do have the electromagnetic of our sun's position, gate 45, in the transit field. That's gate 21 in the ego center. So I'll talk about that when we get to the channel, but that channel theme will dominate over the gate themes. Also, because the channel activates the ego center, it means that our Earth's position, gate 26, is also going to be activated for everyone in the world. Well, let's move to the nodes now in the transit field that bring the homogenized perspective and direction that we'll see play out in the world. This is the context the transit field is bringing, that the sun, Earth, and the other planets express themselves within. And we can't separate ourselves from our environment, so the qualities of these traits can also play out through us. We have the North Node sitting in gate 55, the individual trait of abundance and spirit in the emotional center. It brings a general context that's about the individual spirit and passion. It brings a moody, glass half full, glass half empty perspective, as well as passion and romance, or their polarities. Gate 55 has the highest highs and the lowest lows of all gates. It operates in a spike wave. So we're likely to see more emotional volatility in the world with this present. Since individual traits can drop into melancholy, there's the potential for seeing and feeling that melancholy in the world. The South Node sitting in gate 59, the tribal trait of sexuality in the sacral center. It's part of the channel of mating, and it's going to bring a general context where one-on-one relationships are highlighted. That's what we're going to be seeing playing out around us, whether intimate or friendships or business partnerships. It could also bring an environment where literal fertility issues are more present, or where there could be creative fertility or not. The nodes are sitting in line 3, so it's going to bring a general environment as we delve deeper into this of trial and error, bonds made and broken, adaptation, and a more material perspective, which is pretty aligned with our Sun-Earth activations. For gate 55, line 3 is called innocence. This is where even if you follow your moods, there could still be failure. This is trial and error. As long as you learn from it and move on, nothing will be lost. If in the up of the wave, one brings their individual initiative and it gets a superior to be really excited about it and make commitments out of that, well, there could end up being the inability to fulfill on those commitments when one goes down in the wave. And it's the superior. In that case, it's going to end up taking the punishment. For those with the third line in their designs, if they don't follow their moods and break the bond when they should, it could result in emotional difficulties. For gate 59, line 3 is called openness. It brings an environment where people are open to coming into a bond, a partnership with another. This is where we can really see people dissolving into a relationship and defining themselves in that union and being empowered through that. In the polarity, when the ego gets involved, that openness can bring being empowered through promiscuity. With the third line, bonds made and broken theme, we could see people getting together and also ending relationships, or at least a pressure, even in a long-term relationship, not to be joined at the hip 24/7. So it's an environment of being very open to another for a one-on-one relationship. Something to watch for here is that if you're in a long-term relationship with someone that you're around pretty much 24/7, maybe you're in a business together as well as live together, while this frequency is present, you might find that the constant togetherness is a little more irritating. And there could be this picking of fights to try and create some distance. If that's happening, just remind yourself that this is the transit field, this bonds made and broken pressure that's there. Gate 59 is the voice of the reproductive genes, and the pressure to reproduce is within it. With the third line, the genes are looking for genetic material that's very different. So we could see people that are very different coming together in partnerships. It doesn't mean, though, that the wholeness of each person is a real fit for each other. That takes time to figure that out. The third line can be very fertile or very infertile. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an increase in unwanted pregnancies while this third line is present. Out of that, the issue of sexual freedoms and rights and fertility could also be highlighted. Okay, so that sets our context that we're likely to see around us. Let's look at our channels now. A reminder that when the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their chart is receiving activation of the related traits and qualities. So it has a really big impact that way. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we do have the sun in a channel with its electromagnetic, gate 21, the trait of the hunter, huntress, and control in the ego center. That's being activated by Saturn. And because the sun is part of this channel, it's really going to be a strong channel this cycle and the dominant channel. Saturn in gate 21 is sitting in line 4 called strategy. With time and learning, this trait brings an instinct for the strategy for getting to manifestation in gate 45 at the other end of the channel. How do you go about that? There's a possibility to hone an instinct for what kind of control to exert, who to control, when to control, and so on as part of the strategy. However, we all know strategies don't always work out. And in the single track of the fourth line, especially if one's also trying to prove themselves out of the ego, instead of using that instinct, there could be a real misjudging of the level of opposition and interference of others. Saturn's serious energy and discipline aligns quite well with the strategic nature of this trait, but Saturn could also amp up the over-controlling nature that could be there and the consequences of misjudging the opposition. Bringing gates 45 and 21 together now, they create the channel of the money line, a design of a materialist. This is the tribal leadership channel where energy is exchanged for matter, for resources, and back again. We can think of 45 as like the king or the queen or the CEO of a business that's more outward facing, gathering the support, while the 21's more like the president that's inward facing, working autonomously to make sure that everything in the business is really getting done and people have what they need to accomplish what's required, so that there's achievement and success of the goals and getting those needed resources. Again, those tribal traits bring that theme of mutual support. Do you feel supported or not? This is a channel focused on resources and what you can control or not. So you may feel that pressure to manage your resources is stronger while this is present. The voice of gate 45 is I have, I don't have, I need, I don't need, as we discussed before. So this is a channel where the voices of the haves and the have-nots is going to be expressed. Expect both sides to be more vocal during this cycle. When you have this full channel, it's like having the CEO and the president both. So it can very much be a do-it-yourself pressure that comes with it. If you have it in your design, it really is best to work for yourself, although you do need to learn to delegate. If you don't have this channel in your design, just watch this pressure doesn't have you leaving a job to go out on your own, unless it really is correct for you according to your own strategy and authority. In that case, this is going to be very helpful to have this frequency here. This channel is also going to bring the pressure to acquire material items, so be careful about buying things you can't afford out of this ego pressure towards materialism rather than what you really need. Okay, next up, we have had since May 23rd this medium-term channel of acceptance, a design of an organizational being. It's going to be with us for most of the cycle, but it's finally going to go out on June 12th at 1:43 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, 7:43 p.m. UTC. This is a channel that brings together Gate 17 in the Ajna Center, the Trade of Opinions, and Gate 62, the Trade of Details in the Throat Center. Now, Gate 17, that Trade of Opinions, is where our theories are formed. It's correlated biologically with the right eye that takes in patterns in the now. Gate 17 is going to really bring the pressure to conceptualize your theories and opinions from the various patterns you've taken in to determine which might be best to carry you and ultimately humanity into the future. It's sitting in line 1 called openness. So we saw that actually in our Gate 59. It's also in a line called openness, but that's this openness to a one-on-one relationship. Here, the openness is to patterns. It brings the possibility to be open to many, many different patterns and having opinions in many areas. In the polarity, like an art critic, it's only having opinions when it comes to a certain area of interest that you really enjoy, but no opinion in any other area. For most of the cycle, we're going to be in the detriment with this gate, pulled there by Venus, who's also transiting Gate 62, the electromagnetic. Now, this is being activated by Neptune, and Neptune has that watery, veiling quality to it. So it's going to make it tougher to grasp the patterns and opinions, to bring those theories together with its veiling effect. So it's likely to slow down this whole conceptualizing process and make it a little bit cloudy. Gate 62 is the trade of detail in the throat center that brings all the facts and details together to be able to express out to others so that they can really understand and take that information and go and experiment with it and see if it really works in the real world. It's being activated in the long-term transits by Jupiter, which brings its expansiveness to details. And as I mentioned, we also have Venus in this gate for the first half of the cycle. This is the voice of I think or I don't think. Venus will click through gates 3 to 6. I'm not going to go through all of those, but we'll look at Jupiter, which starts the cycle in line 5 called Metamorphosis. It has a developmental theme that says when excellence is achieved, action is necessary. You learn here that when you have all the detail, it's time to express it so that humanity can benefit from it. The collective can benefit. However, the 5th line is this line where we project on others. So we're going to be projecting on each other that, oh, you have the details and you need to tell me all those details. Well, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But since this is through the transit, there's going to be a lot of people that don't have those details. We're just projecting it onto each other. So with our awareness of this, that's something that you may really need to manage expectations of others around you about the details that you really do have or don't have and what you can organize or can't. On June 7th at 8:36 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, June 8th at 2:36 a.m. UTC, Jupiter is going to move into line 6 called Self-Discipline. Now, every sixth line is able to see its whole circuit, and it has a theme of who and what to trust or not. There tends to be no action from a sixth line unless it can really be seen that what's expressed can really benefit humanity in this case, right? This is part of the logic circuitry. So ultimately, it's about benefiting humanity. Otherwise, the ability to delve in the details will be used for oneself, but there's not that sharing that we hope to see out of the collective circuitry. If you really love what you're doing, though, and see its value, this is a trait that can really support your material success in the sharing of those details. In the not self world, though, we're not likely going to see a lot of sharing of the details. Jupiter could expand the self-discipline for doing detailed work and sharing the results, or it could expand the lack of sharing. When we look at the full channel of acceptance, this design of an organizational being, usually I would say that, oh, this is going to be a really good time for organizing people and things. This is going to be really helpful. But when we get into it about what I just talked about, Neptune's got that veiling effect in gate 17, the opinions, plus gate 17 is going to be in the detriment for almost the full cycle. So there's only going to be opinions in a very narrow area. And the 62, well, it's going to move into that line 6 not too long after the start of the cycle. So I think that it's more likely that anything that's expressed to follow to get things organized in the not self world may end up not working well due to the lack of true understanding in the conceptualizing process with that veiling of Neptune. And trusting what comes out is going to be an issue. It's still going to bring a busy mind, especially if you don't have a defined ajna in your design. And there can be anxiety that your opinions are going to be challenged. That's part of that gate 17 quality. Watch that this mental activity doesn't have you so up in your head that it pulls you away from your own strategy and decision-making authority. Now on June 12th at 7:43 p.m., Jupiter is going to move on and change gates. It's going to move into gate 56, also in the throat center, into line 1. That is the trait of stimulation, part of the abstract experiential circuitry. And because it's coming in so late in the cycle, I will talk about that one in the next cycle. All right, we've got one other short-term channel that came in a little before the start of this cycle on June 7th, and it's going to be with us until June 11th at 5:57 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. That's 11:57 p.m. UTC. We had Mercury moving into gate 39, the individual trait of the provocateur in the root center, with its pressure to provoke the spirit and passion of the other, connecting with its electromagnetic gate 55, the trait of spirit and abundance in the emotional center that we reviewed already. It's one of our nodal positions. Together they create the individual channel of emoting, a design of moodiness. This is going to bring a moodiness and pressure to find your spirit and your passion and to gain an awareness of who and what fills your cup, so to speak, and who or what doesn't. There's going to be pressure to only do what you're in the mood for. It can bring passion and romance or not. Remember that 55 operates in a spike wave, so there can be more emotional volatility here. Okay, let's look at the definitions that are being created in the transit field through the channels, the centers they're activating, and any other gates or traits that are being activated within those centers. Interestingly, almost all the long-term transits are in definition this cycle, other than that gate 59, the trait of sexuality in the sacral center. However, since we know that most of the population are generators, it's still going to be very present in the field. All right, let's look at the consistent themes that are present through the channels now and those gate activations. I will leave out the moon and the inner planet transits unless they're in a channel or are present for most of this cycle. This definition is what everyone in the world is going to be directly conditioned by through the transit field. It'll run those that are not aware. However, with your awareness, you'll have the potential to learn from these frequencies when it's correct for you. For most of the cycle, we're going to have both the channel of acceptance and our main theme, the channel of the money line, present, activating the ego, throat, and ajna centers, which will bring in gate 20, the trait of the now in the throat center, and gate 26, that trait of the egoist in the ego center, our first position. Gate 20 is being activated by Uranus, and it's in line 3, called self-awareness. It could bring revolutionary self-awareness through the trial and error process, where you can be self-conscious of yourself and the world around you. Or if you don't like what you see from that self-awareness, there could be being so overly self-conscious that you really can't function. There could also be this tendency towards this "what's wrong with me" thinking if you end up getting rejected within that third line, bonds made and broken theme, rather than just being aware that your individuality isn't going to be for everyone, and that's okay. If you get into the "what's wrong with me" side, Uranus could really sidetrack you. Putting the themes of this definition together, the conditioning pressure could have you trying to get what you need or want to manifest materially to achieve success through selling others on the strategy to do so, utilizing the patterns you understand will work, along with what your self-awareness in the now has brought, and articulating that with all the details for an organized approach. More likely, what we'll see play out in the not-self world is a drive for materialism that could have the objective to support all in the community, but could also be to maintain elite power while oppressing the people with confusing details and that lack of self-awareness, as well as exaggerating how success can be achieved while underestimating the opposition to the strategies being utilized. Now we have another definition that's split off from that one. It's going to be with us until the evening of June 11th at 5:57 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, 11:57 p.m. UTC. We've got that definition with the channel of emoting that also includes gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the root center. Gate 41 sitting in line 4, called correction, providing the fuel to adapt towards fulfilling on the experience or to be social at the expense of adaptability. Together, there could be the drive to adapt and course correct within an experience to overcome any lack of resources in a way that aligns and contributes to one's passions and the ability to learn from any failures along the way. However, we could also see a hampering of adaptability within individual initiative, and then frustration and disappointment that an experience isn't going the way that one expected, and suppressing one's passion, contributing to a glass half empty perspective, and others being blamed for resulting failures. The moodiness and desire for a new experience could impact the ability to organize and manage the material process in the channel of the money line, for better or worse, when we put all this together. Remember that for any of these traits, it's the homogenizing pressure of the transit field. You can observe it, you can learn from it, but whether there's anything to do from it is according to your own strategy and authority. So just watch that it's not running you. That brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you just want to understand the basics of the body graph at a high level, what's the black and the red about, the different geometric shapes and so on, feel free to grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human-design. All right, that's it for this cycle. Have a great one. Be kind to one another, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.